The plan for today is the winds kind of favor this airport versus Washington, so hopefully we get a second solo in. So the plan, what we do for most second solos is we go up in the pattern, just kind of run through a few times, make sure that he's feeling good, he's flying good, lanes look good, and then I'll kind of pull over to the ramp over here, I'll step out and I'll let him go out and do a second solo. So that'll be his plan for today.
I grew up in an aviation world with my dad, so being in the Air Force and combat search and rescue, and it's all I've always strove to want to fly, but I wanted to be a military aviator. And after 10 years, that never happened, but I still wanted to do it. In my opinion, the route I wanted to take was at least have a really good base and knowledge on what these aircraft can do internally, how to fix them, how to take care of it myself, and so I went that route first, and I figured, well, it'll come, and I set myself a goal for in 5 years when I started to do this and be at least a licensed pilot, and I'm on track. I mean, that's the goal. We'll keep pushing on that goal. I'm not going to let myself get sidetracked on it anymore, or let too much push me off to the side.
Keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Let's get on there.
That's my claim to fame on my first solo. Basically, short field landing.
Confidence. That was good.
It was an amazing, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, everybody says it's an amazing feeling, but for a guy that's been striving to fly as long as I have, and everything that, all the side roads I've had to go down, and then to come back to it, and finally it's there. That was a whole different feeling than I think most people can understand. Every time we fly, it's always got to have the sun in our face.
That's true. Nice.
The one time that I fly in the morning, I'm like, yeah, well, actually, not have the sun in my face.
Of course it's AIDS. Yeah, we got pretty solo.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the cloud, just that low level cloud cover was nice to be like, there's the sun, can't see, and okay, now the clouds are covering that.
Covering the wind. That worked out pretty well. I think he picks up a little bit quicker than most people because he's been around aviation for quite a while now. And as a mechanic, you're in it every single day. So he kind of understands a plane, how it works better, so it translates to how he can fly it better as well. So with code and stuff, it's kind of taken a step back with his progress and moving faster. And we've been really busy with having airplanes and maintenance, getting them running because we're flying so much. So he hasn't been in as much as he'd like to. But now that he's back into it flying a couple times a week now, he's picking up really good. He's ready to get his license.
My dad was in the Air Force as a combat search and rescue man, flying helicopters, UH-60 Payhawks. So growing up, I got to go and sit on the flight line and watch these helicopters take on and off. And being at a military base, you get to see everything. And in 1998, it was kind of a wake-up call, and I was only 8 years old at the time. But my dad had just gotten out of the Air Force, and his crewmates that we grew up around the world together. I knew these guys from Kadena, from Kirtland Air Force Base to Kadena Air Force Base to Nellis Air Force Base. They were killed in a crash. They had a helicopter crash, and kind of a wake-up call. It didn't deter me from wanting to be a pilot and wanting to go that route. That's where my love came from, was with the Air Force, and seeing those planes go into air shows and watching my dad do it. One of my favorite stories, we were living at Nellis Air Force Base, and my dad flew over our neighborhood, helicopter sideways, leaning out of the helicopter waving. I knew it was my dad. And I always wanted to be up there. I just love it.
one of my biggest inspirations is my old boss Sam, and he was an amazing IA. He was a pilot, had his instrument and everything, and so I kind of always looked up to him. And talking to him about being a pilot and an AMP, just you get the whole picture of an aircraft. Because what AMPs know, most AMPs, is only on the ground. What it does on the ground, and it, in theory, should work up in the air. Well, no, we put that to the test. He was a well-rounded individual. So he could hear an airplane and tell you what was wrong with it. So I kind of have him in my back corner, just driving me. So that's why I continued on, and I had set the dream of flying off to the side for a long time with the military and everything, and he even brought it up as, I'll learn to fly these things and then you'll really get the grasp. So that's why I'm where I'm at. I'm in high school now, planning on doing a high school to flight school program through the Army to fly. I wanted to be a dust-off helicopter pilot. And in 2007, on September 5th, 2007, my good friend Dane was killed in Iraq. And I was 17 years old, a guy that already wanted to join the military, and I was full of fight and wanted some vengeance for him. So I left high school, dropped everything that I had for the future just to join the infantry. The quickest way to get into combat. Well, I fell in love with the infantry.
And I did that for 8 years. Loved every minute of it. And when it was time to get out, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, let's pick up back where the dream was, which was aviation and being in aviation. So I looked up a college that could get me an A&P license. Went to that college. Meanwhile, I decided I missed the military again. Went into the reserves as a Black Hawk mechanic. So I was getting the best of both worlds, getting to learn helicopters and doing it real life and learning it in school. Did that for 2 years, got my A&P license, and then I started working for Sam. Sam, to this day, I still credit for my success in aviation where I'm at. And I still talk to him to this day about everything. If I've got an issue, he's willing and ready to help. This is in Colorado, up in at the Greeley-Weld Airport. That's Hangar 1. I'm going to put my plug in there. Moved out here because the airlines were paying a little bit more. Housing in Colorado was getting out of hand. Moved out here for the airlines. Worked for the airlines for just over a year. Made it all the way up to a heavy check supervisor. And it just wasn't where I wanted to be. I mean, the airline world wasn't fun. You get stuck in one thing and that's all you do. If you're good at that one thing, you're not going to get to go do the other 400,000 things to do on an airplane. And so I decided I was coming here to GA to work for Elite because I get to do everything. Not one day is typically never the same. I've done multitude of engines, I've done props, I've done tires, I've done sheet metal work, major repairs and alterations. But John and I went into that conversation of, well, what would it take for me to start flying? It's always been a dream of mine. So now we circled back, and him and I came up with an idea and a plan, and we really started pushing. I was flying a lot in the beginning, and then COVID hit. We kind of took a break and came back to it, knocked some rust off and kept knocking rust off. I had a child in April, so I now had to balance even more, because having I have an older son and a younger son, trying to balance that with flight, work, everything else, kind of slowed down a lot. And one day Corey goes, you've been pre-solo ready. Go get your medical, go get your medical. And I just procrastinated. There wasn't any fear of, oh, I'm not gonna get my medical. It's just, I got a lot to do. I wear a million different hats a day. So finally I just said, you know what, I'm gonna leave early, go get my medical done. And I got my medical done, and 3 days later I soloed. And it was awesome. I mean, to realize that dream after everything that's gone on in the past and setting it off to the side to go do one thing or the other, but that dream's always been there. And I plan on continuing on and doing what needs to be done to see that dream to completion, which for me would hopefully be an Aerotech pilot putting out fires, because that's the next best thing.